Alrighty, everybody. Maybe our final pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. I'm Taylor Doll. We're joined by, again, Jacob Infante. This is kind of your world. Do you love draft day, or by like Saturday you're over it?
I mean, I still love it, honestly, Taylor. And it's I don't know. I like the more so the process of people coming to me and asking, "Hey, I don't know this. I don't know this player. Can you tell me why they're good or whatever?" So it's more of an internal validation thing than anything else. But I still like watching some of these picks being made and looking at it's like, oh, I don't know how that guy fell to round 4 or whatever. There have been a couple that I've been watching where it's like, did this guy really need to go this early? So it's a fun game to play, really. But for me, it's it's always a fun time. It's my favorite time of year, and even though some of the shine around these picks have died down a little bit compared to Thursday, it's still very fun. Still a very fun time for me.
Yeah, because I think most of us, I'm not the full-on engulfed in the draft. So for me, it's like usually after around end of 2, beginning of 3, I start to trickle off of my knowledge of who these guys are. I always have, of course, because there's certain college football teams I follow a little more, or certain players I like. So there'll be ones that kind of pop up. But for me, that first few rounds is definitely it. But speaking of maybe somebody going too early or not, the Bears' newest pick with pick 122, they got a punter, Tory Taylor. It's not just any punter, Jacob. This is a fantastic punter. But tell us a little bit about Tory and your thoughts on where he lands with the Bears.
Yeah, so Tory Taylor is someone that I have rated as one of the highest punters that I've actually ever scouted. So I started watching tape and grading in 2017. And, I think it was the first 2 years I didn't actually watch special teamers. And eventually I made my way around to it. And since then, Tory Taylor, I think only Matt Araiza technically had a higher grade since then, but Tory Taylor is right there with him. He's, truly one of the best, one of the best punters that I've seen at the collegiate level. So is this, early historically for a punter? Absolutely. I mean, this is the highest rated punter since, or the highest drafted punter since Mitch Wishnowsky back in 2019. Who was actually, I think his class was the first I started watching, that or 2018. Okay. I don't remember, but, and there haven't been a ton of 4th round punters. There were 2 in 2022. There's 1 in 2019. And in the last decade, that's it. And now Tory Taylor. So positionally, it seems a bit high, but, trust me, you turn on the tape, or you even, you follow Iowa football, how many times they had to punt the ball, how many times Tory Taylor delivered, and how much of an how effective of an asset that was for their defense, which was one of the best in the country.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I honestly, on Helmets and Heels, one of the girls I work with is a Iowa fan. So we talked a lot of Tory Taylor this year, honestly, which was interesting for me, but it's just because he was every week, honestly, the way he can flip the field, the way you do not see punts outside the 20 for him. And I feel like when we look at last year, let's talk a little bit about that, because we had a year in that first year with Trenton Gill where we felt like they had found a punter that was going to be able to, actually be pretty decent in the NFL. And then last year we saw everything with Trenton Gill kind of fall apart a little bit. So do you think they obviously from last year kind of saw this as a big need now moving forward?
Yeah, and I think, the last 2 years, Trenton Gill was, he was okay. I don't think that, it's the biggest need in the world where it's like, oh, punter needs to be addressed right away. They need to, make some sort of big splash in free agency. But at the same time, the growth from year 1 to year 2 just wasn't really there. And I think it's become pretty clear. And, to be fair, I thought this in the pre-draft process with the punter who doesn't necessarily have an elite leg. Mm-hmm. But, that kind of puts a cap on your ceiling a little bit. And I think that, a guy like Tory Taylor has, I tweeted out just a second ago, I think that he has legit all-pro potential at punter in the NFL, which again, you can debate the positional value of it all, but I feel like that's a very valuable niche to have,
Yeah.
where you can have someone who can consistently pin opposing teams inside the 20. Uh, and Tory Taylor was more than able to do that in Iowa. I mean, just last year he led college football in punts inside the 20. In fact, he led it in the past 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Each of the past 3 years, he was number one in punts inside the 20-yard line, and especially in 2023, he cut down significantly on those touchbacks. So I think it just goes to show the touch that he has down the field as well. So the only thing I'm interested in is the difference in punting rules from college to the pros, where I do think that Tory Taylor, obviously great leg, great downfield touch. There are some times where in college you're allowed to have all your guys shoot downfield, and I do think that helped a little bit in
Mm-hmm.
punt coverage. Whereas in the NFL, you only have two guys shooting downfield, able to field that punt if it hits the ground. So that's the one thing I'm interested in seeing how his game translates to the NFL. But I think that's a very small worry in the
Mm-hmm.
grand scheme of things. I feel pretty confident with how efficient he was at Iowa, with the leg talent he has. I mean, he's listed 6'4", 230.
Yeah.
That's a big punter, and naturally big punters have usually a lot stronger legs, just naturally because of the sheer bulk and the muscle that they have in that leg. So, and that shows with Taylor too.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about this pick. I realize some people are like, oh, why didn't you get a defensive lineman? Why didn't you get an edge rusher? I think that a genuine argument could be made that a top-notch punter has more of an impact than a rotational backup edge rusher.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me, but if you have someone with that elite potential in this niche, someone you are going to use a couple times a game, just ideally you'd never like to use the punter, but that's just, that's not how it works. You're going to utilize him, at least 2-3 times a game, if not more.
Yeah.
So if you can get someone who can consistently pin opposing offenses deep into their own territory, then that's a very valuable thing to have.
Yeah, I like this. One comment just popped up. I think it's Graphiel is what it is, but he says, "What's Taylor's nickname going to be? Punt God or Pen Down King?" I'm like, I feel like we'll have shirts pretty soon on Tory Taylor. So when we're talking about this, because obviously a lot of people, when you're talking about a punter, and now you just drafted Caleb Williams and added it Roma Dunze, and you're adding this to an offense that we're all expecting and hoping to be a pretty good, possibly top offense in the league. So a lot of people's initial comment was like, well, we don't want to punt that much. Why are we wasting this on a punter? But I feel like in the same breath, yes, as much as we're hoping this offense to be better, Jacob, I think that also being able to count on your punter and not give the opposing teams the field position we saw so many times last year is actually really important.
Yeah, definitely. And, I feel like with the rookie quarterback, especially, there are going to be some instances where, whether we like to admit it or not, he might make some questionable decisions, some questionable throws. I mean, that's just the nature of the game. Every rookie quarterback does that. And I think that especially when you're playing in Soldier Field here, for now, in a dream world, he's going to be Tory Taylor's going to stick around for the new stadium whenever that gets built, 2028 or so. But for these next couple of years, especially, you need a punter who can deal with that, that lakefront wind.
Yeah.
And I think he's got more than enough leg to do it. And ultimately, you're right. I think that, last year, Gill didn't massively hurt, but he didn't help either. And, there are very few punts that he had where I was like, whoa, like that's a good punt.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, he's just kind of there. And I think while that's not a pressing need to fix, I do think that that's something where it's, you could certainly upgrade. And I think the Bears did in a massive way by drafting Tory Taylor.
Yeah, we have another question. This one's actually an interesting one because I don't know much about this. And obviously with the new kickoff rules, someone was asking, is it a possibility that maybe they want, with the new kickoff rules, maybe they want a bigger dude than Cairo to be able to do that because of the changes? Is that something you see at all possible?
Absolutely. And I think that's a really good point that I haven't really considered. I've been thinking about these new kickoff rules from a return perspective, where I think you're going to see a lot more running backs returning, where, they have that one cut ability where they just need to find one hole and then they can accelerate through it. But from a kickoff perspective, I mean, I think that's, even more so important, where if you can have a big legged guy who can consistently hit those touchbacks, I think that's a valuable asset. And Cairo Santos, historically isn't the best on kickoffs. And, he's a very accurate kicker on field goals and PATs, but that just isn't kickoffs aren't a strength of his. So if you can get, and I know that the Bears used Pat O'Donnell a couple of years ago in that capacity on kickoffs. And I think you could see something similar here with, I'd argue Tory Taylor has a better leg than O'Donnell. And, that's obviously no disrespect to O'Donnell. I think he has a pretty good leg. But when I think that you look at Taylor, you see someone with high level leg talent and someone with, exceptional downfield touch. So I think on kickoffs, especially, that's going to come into a lot of help, because you're looking for those guys who can consistently hit touchbacks now, because they've changed the rules to make kickoffs more favorable, or kick returns more favorable. So getting someone who can consistently hit it in the end zone that's a valuable thing to have, and I think Taylor's going to be the guy to do that.
Yeah, and honestly, so it makes even more sense when you think about it in that light, and it will be fun to kind of see this evolution of special teams when it comes to the kickoff, because this year, they're doing it for health, but they also, I think, want to bring back the energy of kickoffs that I feel like we had lost recently. So when you have someone like Tory Taylor too, that you're going to see out in the field potentially in many different ways, it's good too. Jacob, before I let you go, just a couple things, because like I said, this could potentially be the Bears' final pick of this draft. Kind of your overall thoughts on it. Obviously, Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze, everyone was absolutely stoked on that. And then now with only 2 more picks, it's a punter and then an offensive lineman out of Yale. So what are your kind of overall thoughts on what Poles was able to do with the 4 picks?
Honestly, I part of me is a little bit surprised that it only ended up being 4 picks, and maybe they'll use future draft capital to, trade back up. We'll see. But if the draft stays as it is, I'd give it an A. I genuinely would. And, I might get accused, you're a Bears fan. You're just, you're appealing to the homerism. No, I genuinely believe that, especially 3 of the 4 picks were extremely good value according to my board. And, Karan, I have someone as a late 2nd round pick being being an early 3rd. I think that's good value. Rome Odunze I had as the number 4 overall player on my board. He went number 9. And obviously Caleb Williams being the top guy on my board, he went number 1. That's good value, obviously. So, and then you bring in a guy where, all right, I'll admit I had Tory Taylor as an early 5th round pick, but now if you take him as a mid late 4th round pick, I think that's
far off.
Yeah, that's not far off. I think that's acceptable. You could definitely make the argument of that. And, you're looking at like a Mitch Wisnowski was the last punter to go ahead of where Tory Taylor ended up getting selected. I think that, at least in my opinion, Tory Taylor is a better prospect coming out of college than Wisnowski was. And, Wisnowski's a good player in the NFL now. So if Tory Taylor can even reach that, then that would be a very good pick and a very valuable selection. So I think you have this offensive firepower, and now you have a punter where even if the offense doesn't work out, you can push the ball deep down the opponent's field. They have to start inside their own 20. That's not an easy thing to do. And when you have the defense the Bears have, that's going to be that's going to be tough to march down the field consistently. So I like this pick. I love this draft. That's what I think. And obviously the first 2 round 1 picks were slam dunk in my opinion. So I was going to be happy with whatever the Bears ended up with regardless. I think Amagaji was a steal in round 3. And from a long-term perspective, I don't know if he's going to start right away, but I think, this honestly might be better for him because he's a tad bit raw, but having the chance to develop, play on the bench for a little bit, not have as high of expectations, and learn how to maximize his length, his athleticism, his strength, I think that could be very valuable for his long-term development. And then, Tory Taylor is Tory Taylor. I mean, anyone who watched Iowa football knows that he was
Iowa
their
football
player. Yeah, he was their best player on the field. And I can't think of the last time where, I mean, I guess Matt Ariza in San Diego State, but at the Big Ten level, in the Power 5 level, I can't think of a time where I could definitively say, oh, yeah, the punter's the best player on the team. But that was the case with Tory Taylor.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when you think Iowa football this year, there's two players that really pop out, and it's Tory Taylor and Cooper DeJean are like literally the two guys you talk about.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel like I should say Cooper DeJean was the best. Yeah, Cooper DeJean was the best prospect in this class. He was the best player on the team. The best offensive player, though, on the team was Tory Taylor. And I'd argue that from a brand perspective, Tory Taylor was Iowa's brand this year. So I should clarify, and I appreciate you bringing him up because I had a stupid brain fart not thinking of
You're good. It's interesting to me, and you made the comment of you were expecting more picks, and who knows, it could still possibly happen. I was like, just by the way that Ryan Poles has kind of talked this offseason, he said multiple times he's good with 4 picks, and I feel like we've talked so much about how deeply the draft kind of drops off after round 4 too. So I was kind of in the mindset of like, maybe he believes that the 4 guys he can get with those 4 picks are enough with everything they've done in free agency and everything that's kind of going on. But I do still, in my opinion, would really like to see an edge in some form or fashion. I don't know if that means they're going to try and, re-sign Jan or what the situation with that is, but I definitely think it's still something they need to address.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there for sure. I think that there's still a pretty clear need that the Bears have at edge rusher. And I mean, I guess you could start DeMarcus Walker for the time being, but I'm curious what they do in free agency. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to bringing back Yannick Ngakoue to a reasonable deal. I mean, he didn't live up to expectations, but when, in that little bit of game overlap that Ngakoue and Montez Sweat had, he looked pretty good, and he was pretty productive. So again, maybe that's not the path they want to go down, but I'd certainly consider it. I think that realistically, you're probably going to get a stopgap guy this year, and then you focus heavily on that in the draft next year. Which off my early evaluations, I wouldn't be surprised if an edge rusher is the first pick in the draft. I've got my eye on James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee being, maybe the top guy in this class, but based off of early evaluations, defensive line should be a strength of the 2025 draft class. So,
which is perfect.
Yeah, it works out perfectly. So you've got the round 1 pick, you've got 2 round 2 selections. You might have 2 third-round selections if Ian Cunningham gets selected to be a GM somewhere. So they're going to have a lot of capital to work with, and I think that defensive line. Maybe bring in another offensive lineman early. I don't know, but especially defensive line, I think that's going to be a big focus for the Bears in 2025.
Which I know with an extension, they're definitely trying to keep Cunningham around a little longer. But I know teams are definitely going to have their eye on Ian Cunningham. All right. Well, Jacob, thanks so much. I appreciate it. I know maybe you calmed some people's nerves a little bit about Tory Taylor. And honestly, the comments, one comment, someone said we needed a linebacker more than a punter. I don't think we need a linebacker. I like our linebacker room, but everybody else is like, he's a great kid. He's not an ordinary punter. Your guys are going to love him. So definitely positive vibes for picking a punter in round 4.
Yeah, I mean, and I feel like it's something naturally you take a punter, relatively early. People are going to have mixed opinions on it, but Tory Taylor's a stud. I feel pretty confident that he's going to be a valuable punter for Chicago, and I mean, he might be their best punter since I think he has the potential to be better than O'Donnell. Might be their best punter since Brad Maynard.
Okay,
and I think that I'd feel pretty happy.
That's something, yeah.
That's a pretty sizable bar. Maynard good in Chicago, so I think you're looking at that as that's Tory Taylor's ceiling. He has the potential to be truly one of the best punters in this in the NFL. So I think that's the Bears taking him in round 4. That's pretty reflective of that they feel the same way about him.
I agree. All right, Jacob. Well, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day. Maybe we'll get another one. If not, you get to just kind of enjoy some of these other players you've been studying. But have a good rest of your weekend.
Thank you. You too. Go Bears.
Thanks. Go Bears.
Yeah.